Hello, my name is Ken Rosenberg, and I'm a PhD candidate in the media school at IU. As part of the MEL research group in the Institute of Communication Research, I was fortunate enough to help a couple of professors and a few graduate students run this multi-site study that looked at cooperative gameplay and its effects on pro-social behaviors and effective task completion. Just to review the literature quickly, we know that cooperative play improves friendships, decreases biases between groups, encourages pro-social behaviors, not just with partners, but with strangers and outgroup members too. While we're interested in the effects as communication scholars, we haven't really been looking at communication itself as a factor in this cooperative gameplay. It's left out of a lot of studies, and even though it's presumed or even necessary for some cooperative play, we don't really know because it hasn't been observed whether or not players' increases in pro-social behavior after these gaming sessions is explained more by the cooperative play and the mechanics and the systems or the voice chat and the communication that you have between people. So is it the cooperative play or the cooperative communication that is priming these norms and getting people to be more pro-social after the gameplay? Let's find out. We had partners play Overcooked 2. It's a sequel to a popular indie game, and we had them placed in one of three different conditions. Our main conditions, the primary manipulation here is whether or not they were able to communicate via voice chat with their gameplay partner, and our control condition was a solo play condition where they played by themselves. Afterward, though, regardless of the gameplay type, they all had the same post-game puzzle solving task where they voice chatted with a partner in a different room to solve these puzzles. You can see here in the video game, Overcooked 2 is a game that really necessitates cooperation. You're chopping up ingredients and mixing things up, boiling them, plating them, cleaning the plates, getting them back in so that you can fill the orders on the top left side of the screen. You can mind the timer on the bottom right side of the screen, and you can try to collect some points and money in the bottom left side of the screen. Over subsequent levels, there are barriers and other things put in place that really make it clear that you need to be cooperating, communicating, collaborating with your partner in order to succeed. And we wanted to know if that type of verbal communication was going to better explain team performance or cooperative norms after gameplay. And it turns out that they don't, which means it's the gameplay, which is interesting. And we'll talk about that. Our main theory that we're operating under here for this study is the theory of bounded generalized reciprocity. Our research group has used this theory to forward previous studies, and the mechanism behind BGR is this group heuristic, having it primed. Normally, we're walking around all the time with this trait-like set of personal norms of positive reciprocity, what we've learned over time in terms of being helpful to others, but we want to know if cooperative play is priming this group heuristic and it's making people more group minded in their actions and typically increasing their likelihood to be pro-social. First, we needed to know if our main conditions were in fact doing something that the control was not. And, are the cooperative play conditions in fact boosting people's sense of teamwork? And that is true. We had a manipulation check that's significantly different, and it shows that people's self-report of team effectiveness was higher when they played with a partner first. The actual team-based performance outcomes were different, but the perception of teamwork, in other words, playing on a team definitely made people feel like they were playing on a team. We also wanted to measure their effectiveness. And in looking at outcome variables, we've had studies before, as 2018, where we use things like the prisoner's dilemma, plenty of video game studies, plenty of studies on pro-social behavior will do this, where you'll take something from the field of economics, specifically game theory, and use something like a social dilemma or these repeated rounds game-like tasks to measure outcome behaviors of cooperation and pro-social behavior. Not only does most collaboration not look like a one-shot dilemma, but frankly, if we're looking to see that pro-social games build relationships and cooperation in different tasks, we should use a task that isn't rooted in game theory. That way it's not a game-to-game sort of situation, and we're really assessing the concept of transfer here as well. And again, we want to know whether or not that communication between players is accounting at all for the pro-social effects. Therefore, we came up with this different measurement. We had people look at pentominoes. These are these 5 square shapes that can be formed into different letters of the alphabet. Each partner received in their separate rooms the same code sheet with the same letters, and they were given 2 unique sets of 5 different solutions of 5 by 5 square puzzles. So they were all given 5 squares in each room, and they were their goal over 2 7-minute rounds was to instruct the other person on how to build that perfect square, the 5 by 5 square, using a series of those shapes. When they got one right, they were able to move on to the next one, but they needed to keep working on the same puzzle until they got it right. Um, they switched after 7 minutes, and each person got to serve as both a clue giver and a puzzle solver. In addition to this team effectiveness outcome measure and the perception of team effectiveness, we also wanted to look at specific communication strategies. So we took some subscales off of a modified questionnaire, and we looked at construction, constructive conflict, and co-construction to see if the different types of communication that were occurring were building cooperation for the post-game task. And then as a baseline, again, that trait-like sense of personal positive reciprocity norms. We use the personal norm of reciprocity scale. And we presume that people who didn't get to play cooperatively are going to be relying more on this. The people we brought into the lab, you'd never guess. They came from 3 large public universities. They came in for extra credit. They were recruited into dyads. They were majority female, majority white, and we took about an hour of their time in compensation for the extra credit. So yeah, big shock there. Anyway, in our typical lab setup, we had them placed into different computer labs. Each player did not see each other prior to the experiment. They were all given headsets, even the solo condition to hear the gameplay audio, they put them on. And then later for the cooperative gameplay task or the post-game task, we had them flip down the headset so they could talk with the microphone. Everybody played the tutorial and then level 1-1, and then we asked them to play 3 levels total, including 1-1. And that also included replays. If they didn't pass a level, they needed to play it again. So in theory, participants could have played level 1-1, 1-2, and then 1-2 again, and that could have been their 3-level session. We had them answer a post-gameplay questionnaire about their experience and also their feelings toward their partner, if applicable. And then we had them do that puzzle solving task with the pentominoes. We introduced it to them, told them how it was going to work, and then we had the 2 7-minute rounds. Ultimately, more formally, what we wanted to know is, did the cooperative gameplay lead to better performance outcomes compared to people who didn't play cooperatively, compared to our control condition? And the answer is yes, kind of. You can see here the graph that shows that there's something going on in round 2. So when we ran an analysis that collapsed both rounds and didn't find any significant differences between conditions, we were sort of inspired to run a post hoc t-test on that round 2 after plotting it, because you can see some differences here. And while the voice condition is not significantly different compared to the solo the solo control condition, our mute condition was significantly different in terms of puzzle completion on round 2, which means that they were the most likely to see improvements in performance from round 1 to round 2, and that after this learning effect that we're assuming happened in round 1, where everybody's kind of getting used to the puzzles in general, we're really seeing a split and the differences of effects of the gameplay treatment such that the mute condition was the most effective. We have some theories about why the voice condition was not as effective. So we have partial support for that, but in general, cooperative play did see people performing better than the solo condition on that puzzle task. We also wanted to know if communication, specifically our main manipulation, if you were able to communicate and have that voice chat, were you more likely to develop communication strategies, those different subskills that I mentioned? Were those going to be significantly higher on average for that chat condition versus the mute or the solo condition? No, I don't even have a graph for you. We ran some mixed linear models, and no condition did not predict positive perceptions of communication strategies. So no support for research question 2, but we're still really interested in general in whether or not we're overriding that sense of personal norms of positive reciprocity. Are we priming that group heuristic? And so the other way to ask this is compared to the solo player. So if you're solo, you're not getting that group heuristic primed. Are you more likely to rely on your existing norms for your puzzle performance? And the answer to that is yes. So if you ask it in the reverse and we look at it here, what you see is that people with low positive reciprocity norms, people coming into the lab, not being very helpful in general, are not going to do well on solving the puzzles when they didn't get that group heuristic treatment from the cooperative gameplay. But here we see that if you walk into the lab with high personal reciprocity norms, you're going to be pretty much as helpful as the people who did receive the prosocial gameplay treatments. So that's really interesting. But regardless of which direction they're leaning in and how well they're doing, what the main takeaway from this slide in terms of our research questions is that without the cooperative gameplay to buoy your group norms, you're going to be relying on your personal norms of reciprocity. So we do have support for that. We are seeing some sort of cooperative effect happening here. Just to wrap things up, partner communication is really important and we should look at it. Not only can it shape in-game behaviors, it might even supersede the predictive power for subsequent behaviors. In other words, we saw that communication actually overrode the task performance benefits of cooperative gameplay, such that the mute condition was in fact more productive to a significant degree compared to the solo condition, while the voice condition was not. So voice communication, whether it's helping the task at hand or hindering the task at hand, is definitely doing things to the predictive power of our subsequent behaviors, even if we're not interested in communication. Our current study is really novel because we're looking at a post-treatment task that is not a gamer dilemma. And in fact, our measurement of prosocial behavior is very tangible and tasking. They're manipulating physical objects and working with each other over a round. They can't pause, they can't move on, they can't say, I'm not gonna help you and move on to the next round, or I'm gonna free ride off of this and take all the pool of resources. They can't click through this. They had to sit there for 7 minutes and really work with someone to try and solve these puzzles. And as somebody who sat outside the room for a few of these, let me tell you, they really did work through them. Our focus is on communication strategies leading to effective performance, not just pro-social attitudes, but do the things that people do in the game lead to people doing things better outside the game. And our study is different for doing all those things. Ultimately, we're also interested in the fact that communication could foster greater team performance, but our study kind of shows that it's not going to happen quickly. Participants in the voice chat condition, they didn't perceive cooperation across any of the 3 dimensions, which is kind of disheartening. However, people in that chat condition did have increased perceptions of effective teamwork. So maybe they're valuing their relationships more than the objective performance. Maybe they don't want to yell at their partner just to get this puzzle solved because they care about the long-term relationship and the long-term cooperation. There could be benefits that outweigh that initial inefficiency, and we don't know yet based on this study. But we also see that if you don't have that voice chat, maybe focusing on the gameplay during the session leads to greater focus on task completion during the post-game session. So that might be beneficial depending on what you're looking to do. Some limitations and opportunities for future research. We really would have loved to record communication during the game and puzzle task. That's limiting because of the IRB and the amount of time and effort it takes to code those things. But for sure, some follow-up studies should be looking at coding the communication during those tasks. And it's only 15 minutes. Like I said earlier, relationships, trust, it's built over time. So whether it's the treatment or the measurement, 15-minute sessions, we could benefit from some long-term studies here. What other concepts might be interesting is the fact that communication during the gameplay might be helping players negotiate their different personal norms of reciprocity between each other, between the player and the gameplay during gameplay that we're not looking at here. That would also be something else to look at in future research. And there are many other games besides Overcooked and many other types of cooperative mechanics. And while chatting over a headset with a computer in a different room is very representative of a lot of cooperative gameplay right now, especially, there are definitely lots of other communication contexts through which to analyze this phenomenon. Our final takeaways here, just know that communication is a common source of cooperative norms across all these different tasks. And while cooperative play improves task performance, social communication could, at least in the beginning, inhibit task-related focus and effort. Maybe you develop shortcuts with that communication over time, but we don't know. And prosocial play, regardless of the condition, does seem to be overriding those personal norms of positive reciprocity. Playing cooperatively does lead to cooperation later. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We'd love to share our data, our results. There's some limited references here, but if you'd like the full thing, Please check out the paper, enjoy the rest of the conference, and thanks for staying through this talk. Really appreciate it, and I hope you learned something about the effects of communication on prosocial gameplay and prosocial behavior. Thank you.